a parent, if you are the parent and you want to bring me as your attorney, of course, and maybe a parent-child advocate, and maybe Cousin Joe that has significant knowledge as to your child's development and what his or her needs may be, we're all allowed to be there as well, as long as we have valuable input. And once we're there, we would, all have an opportunity to speak, of course, give the district our input. They would tell us their input. They would present us with what the program what the program that they're proposing is. So this is what we'll do. Normally, before the meeting, the school district will send the parents a draft IEP. IEP is an acronym for Individualized Education Program. And this draft will usually have the goals and objectives, which is really the heart and soul of the IEP, because the goals and objectives is what's going to happen in order for your child to progress academically and to achieve certain goals. They will have that. However, most draft IEPs before the meeting will not contain, they will not specify what exactly will be done in order to achieve the goals and objectives specified in the proposed IEP. Once you would get to the meeting and have the conversation around the table, those blanks should, technically speaking, get filled in. However, I do have to say, Dan, that I have seen many IEPs done in the state that are just like blank IEPs. They're standardized forms. Often they're not individualized, and that's where the value comes in hiring somebody like myself or somebody like a parent-child advocate that would be trained and would work in this area in order to point out to the parent, this IEP is not individualized at all. Because often parents will walk into these meetings trusting the school district to do the right thing, and unfortunately, often that doesn't happen. So it's very important for parents that have a child that is disabled, that is classified as eligible to receive a free appropriate public education via this IEP document. It's important for them to know that the goals and objectives have to be very specific. They have to state present levels of functioning and how it has to be written out, what specifically will be done by the educators working with your child in order to implement these goals so that they are achieved.
So it can't be overly broad in general.
It has to be pretty detailed. In other words, the most important thing about goals and objectives, and that's probably a subject matter for another show because there's a lot to talk about in that area as well, is that these goals have to be measurable. So that means that they have to be pretty detailed and they have to be measurable, meaning, they have to specifically say, like, for example, Johnny will start working on writing sentences composed of 6 words, for example. I'm just throwing it out there. And by June 30th, he will be able to do that. So then, how would you measure it? You would have to start looking at his work. You can demand to see what he's doing, or you would, work as a parent with him at home and see, can your child really do this? Can your child really now achieve this goal that the educators, that the IEP and the educators that are working with him have set in order for them to achieve? And it can't be
something then that just says, we will make this student better. We hope to have we have to have significant improvement within 6 months. That's too vague.
Yeah, but some IEPs are very vague. I have to be honest with you. I've seen a lot of IEPs, especially in the state of New Jersey. It's interesting because in New York, they're different. The state of New York writes very detailed goals and objectives. They're really on top of it. For some reason, in New Jersey, not all school districts are on top of it. They're kind of like standard forms that are being pumped out. I mean, I've seen IEPs for some of my clients that have included occupational therapy in the IEPs for a student that's not even receiving occupational therapy. So they're very...
So it's cut and paste.
Yes. And so that's the issue with those IEPs where, again, if you are a parent that has a child with disability and a classified child, it's important to hire an advocate or an attorney that practices in this area to help you really figure out if you have a document that is individualized to your child, based on which there are written specific goals and objectives that are measurable, that you will be able to, at the end of the year, see, has your child achieved the goal that's set forth in their IEP or not? And that is the most important thing because, like I said, the heart and soul of your child's IEP is the goals and objectives. And if they're not written out in the way that's detailed and specific, that you can then measure at the end of the year, your child is probably not going to progress.
We only have a few minutes left to finish our conversation. So one question I have is, can you give us just 2 or 3 different specialized education activities what we could expect might be available to students in New Jersey?
Oh, sure. For example, your child may be able to receive speech therapy several times a week if they need that. They may be able to receive psychological counseling within the school if they need support, you know, if they're having a hard time dealing with school on a daily basis or any type of phobias. Occupational therapy. Those are like the basic things that normally go into an IEP. They might receive individualized or particular reading and writing instruction, math instruction, so their skills can be strengthened. It really depends on what the disability is. There's different related services available in school districts depending on the child's needs.
If we have a severe case, and again, we only have a few minutes, is it possible that a student who is not able to be mainstreamed is not able to learn in a special education environment within the school, that they can go to a special school?
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. School districts are responsible for making sure that they are placed in an educational environment, even if it means that it's not within the school district's special needs program that is available, that they would have to go out and outsource it to a private school that is able to cater to that student's needs. And often, you know, the student will bounce between a couple of private schools, a couple of special education schools before they find the right one for them in which they can thrive, in which, you know, they can be taught to their strengths and weaknesses. So yeah, it's absolutely the school district's responsibility to educate them, whether or not it happens in district or out of school district.
What would you like to close with, because we only have about a minute?
I think that it's important for parents that have kids with special needs to know their rights and know that they are entitled to fight for their child and get them the appropriate education, whether or not that means hiring some help or going out there and becoming more informed, more you know, better versed in this area. You as a parent have rights to make sure that your child is progressing academically and is receiving a free, appropriate public education.
When you say free, appropriate public education, the standard is, as I understand it, to mainstream those students that can be mainstreamed, to keep students in the classroom or at least the school into special education when that works, and as a last resort,
Yes. Well,
go out.
Yes, and you're right, Dan. What it is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act mandates that every student should be educated in a least restrictive environment. So what that means is, of course, the least restrictive environment is the regular school, where a student that may have a disability is integrated and is kind of interacting, communicating with the rest of the kids in the community. That's the least restrictive environment. However, not all kids that have special needs are able to progress in that environment. So then the school district, even though it may not be their first choice, has to find a different environment for them to be educated, even if it's not the least restrictive, but it may be the right one for them. So that's where it's kind of like tricky, but the schools normally do prefer to educate the students in the least restricted environment, meaning within the school district, unless they cannot or unless the student is not progressing. Then they will be placed in a private school out of the school district.
So when all is said and done, the government has a responsibility. The school district is bound by the IDEA. And I want to thank you for sharing this information with us.
Thank you, Dan.
And thank you for tuning in to LawTalkToday.tv. I'm Dan Agatino, your host.